Hi folks, and welcome to the Salty Seaman. Today we're going to talk about a little topic that's been going around the internet for the last couple of years, especially the last few months. It's really kind of heated up, as one of those, new kind of conspiracy, otherworldly topics. I'm talking about the Mandela Effect. Now, if you know me, you're a hardcore viewer of my channel, you've seen some of my old videos, I do love that kind of stuff. More from an entertainment value than an actual, I believe in anything. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Depends on it. I kind of look at everything with a comms razor. The most likely explanation is probably the one that's true. But I still love stuff like UFOs, cryptology, government conspiracies. And the Mandela Effect is like one that's really kind of blowing up lately. This is one, if you don't know what the Mandela Effect is, it's basically the idea that we're possibly living in a parallel universe to one we might have lived in before, or possibly it's like a matrix. We're in the matrix and the universe gets reset. And sometimes, whatever version you go with, the details often don't exactly match our memories. This is called the Mandela Effect because a lot of people believe that they remember in the 80s, Nelson Mandela died in prison. They remember the funeral procession and what a big deal it was on TV. And of course, Nelson Mandela did not die in the 80s. He was released in the 90s, became president of South Africa, and died, I think, 2012. Another famous one of this is probably the second most famous, if not the most famous, the Berenstain Bears. How do you remember their name being spelled? Was it Berenstein or is it Berenstain? And a lot of people get really mad about this because they swear up and down this is how they saw it as a kid, and there's no way their memory is faulty on this. So the only explanation is we're in a parallel universe or the Matrix rebooted and some details are different. So, having a little fun with this. I thought I'd do one. I didn't see a lot of military stuff out there. I saw a few, and I had a few of my own, which I may just be misremembering, or maybe it's just proof that we are in the Matrix, living in a parallel universe. So I'll give you a few. First one off, my personal one, and this is one I have seen a few other people say, the Marine globe and anchor. Now, I am Navy, but I have grown up with the globe and anchor, the Marine symbol, for my entire life. My dad was a retired Marine. He had the hats, he had the shirt, he had the sweatshirts. He had the stickers on his car. We had a giant globe and anchor bust he got for a retirement present that was on our mantle my entire life. I'm very, very familiar with the Marine globe and anchor. So something that's been bothering me the last few years is it doesn't look like it used to. I could swear that where the globe is, it has the eagle on top. There was something going around that globe at some point in my life. And I've seen a few other people say the same thing. Some people, there was like some more line, aka rope, going around it. There was maybe an arrow. There was something else there, and I could just chalk it up to faulty memory. But again, I saw the damn thing all the time. Maybe familiarity breeds ignorance, but I always felt like when I started seeing it in the last 5-6 years, it just kind of looked wrong to me, and I didn't know why. And I've seen a few other people say the same thing. This is one that I've never seen anyone else do but me. If anyone else has the same memory, let me know. Admiral Boorda's death. The chief of naval operations died, I believe, 1996. He committed suicide over, he was wearing some combat awards, and supposedly he wasn't authorized to wear them. There's still a lot of debate about it, but someone was about to expose him. And he committed suicide, they say, related to that era. There's also a lot of conspiracy theories about his death, which kind of plays into this. Let me explain. There's a lot of things that he was killed, it wasn't a suicide. But, so, the original way I remember it for the first couple of years was he shot himself in the head. And the conspiracy was he was right-handed and he shot himself with his left hand. And that's why everyone thought, like, ooh, this is... why would he use his non-dominant hand to shoot himself? Doesn't make any sense, blah, 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 blah. And then a couple of years later, I start hearing like, no, he shot himself in the chest. Which again, same thing. It's like, why would he shoot himself in the chest? Like that's just a weird way to commit suicide. I would say maybe he wanted an open casket funeral. You know, but regardless, like that's in my mind. I do distinctly remember that, and that was part of the whole. You know, he was killed by it was a suicide because he used his non-dominant hand, and then the story after a couple of years, around 98, 99, seemed to change, and it became he shot himself in the chest. And I just distinctly seem to remember it was he shot himself in the head with his non-dominant hand. Am I misremembering? And did I just hear the things wrong? Did I hear someone uninformed? That's why I do it. I don't know, but it's definitely one that's kind of weird to me. And like in recent years, I've kind of, thought like, well, maybe there's something to this. Another one. In terms of ribbons and medals, I've seen some other people say some other stuff. This is one personally for me. I've seen people say, they don't remember this medal or this precedence or how this worked. But for me personally, it was always, I'm just one of those pedantic SOBs, like stuff like, order of precedence is, stuff I'm going to remember, rank structure, like that stuff like never was an issue with me. Like going through boot camp, like I was the first guy, I just remembered all the ranks. And I've never had to like look at a cheat chart to how to stack my ribbon rack. I just know what the order of precedence is. It's just kind of how my brain works. And even though these are medals that are way out of my league for what I've done, so I wouldn't have any reason to really know about them. But one of the ones I always saw was like for most of my military career, I could swear the Silver Star was the second highest after the Medal of Honor. Now, the Medal of Honor always has been the top medal for the U.S. military, and just is one of those guys who just keeps that kind of stuff in his head. I was always a bit disturbed. Like, I don't remember when it was, 7 years ago. It was like, no, the Service Cross is the second highest, and the Silver Star is the third highest, and I kind of looked at it like, I don't remember it being that. Like, I always, like, I at the time, I just kind of chalked it up to like, well, I was mistaken, but part of it always dug at me. I'm like, no, I remember this for so long as the Silver Star was the second highest, and then the Service Cross was third or even fourth down. It wasn't even like, I didn't think of it in that category, but of course it is. So is this an example of me just having some fucked up memories, just misremembering order precedence, or is this a sign of something else? Now again, I've seen a few other people talk about military medals, and they mentioned other issues, not that one, but that's the one that I personally have. Speaking of military enlisted chevrons, this one is not one I have. Like, it's me, like, the Navy always has the upside down V, and everyone else has the or has the regular side V, and everyone else has the upside down V. It's how the service works. Like the Navy's, we're weirdly backwards, and when we start putting rockers on, same thing. But I've seen a lot of people like swear up and down, like, no, they were either, remember like everyone had, like the Navy does, the inverted chevron, the inverted V, or the Navy was always doing the same thing the other services did. Now, I said I don't have this one personally, but I've seen guys who swear, they were in the military, they served for however long they did, or they were military aficionados, and then one day the chevrons were backwards, however it was. And I've seen the same thing for the British military. I think theirs is fairly similar to ours. There's a video on YouTube about a guy who's just like flabbergasted because it's backwards to what he remembers it as. So that's interesting. I wonder if there's anyone out there who has the same kind of, like, I literally had to look it up. Like, I've been in the Navy. I was in the Navy 20 years, and I had to go look it up, like, make sure I knew. I was like, how is it fucking done? I'm like, am I sure? I'm like, okay, this is how it works. I felt kind of weird about it, but yeah, that's another interesting idea for the Mandela Effect. Another one I've seen, Clinton, the idea Clinton bombed Iraq. This is one I remember, no problem. Like, I was in the service. I remember 98 Clinton bombed Iraq, and there was several other times, under the Bill Clinton regime, Iraq did receive air attacks from us. And there's some people online who, and you can say that maybe they just didn't remember it, but they're very specific on the idea that, they're very big news junkies, war aficionados, or were in the service who don't remember any attacks on Iraq like that during the Clinton regime. The first one was under Bush in February 2001. So throwing that one out, anyone else have a memory of that? Like I said, I remember the bombings. I remember what happened. It wasn't a huge deal, but I mean, it was there. It was talked about. But these other people were saying no, there were sanctions and there was a lot of tension, but he never actually dropped any bombs on them. And that's not what I remember. So if anyone else has that memory, let me know in the comments. Another one, and this is one I don't put a lot of faith in. I really think this one, if anything, is definitely you just didn't know enough history. But other people have said no, I'm a huge war buff, history buff. World War II is my thing. And all of a sudden, in their mind, they'd always heard, as far as they knew, Pearl Harbor was the only time Japan ever attacked America in World War II. As anyone with a little bit of knowledge and some deep, not even deep knowledge, just some decent knowledge of World War II, Japan did have a couple of very minor attacks on California following Pearl Harbor. They don't get the historical coverage the original attack does, of course, but I mean, it's I remember that in high school. It's mentioned at least in a couple of paragraphs in my American history book, my senior year of high school. And it was on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel. All those do talk about it, but it's more of a side fact trivia. But there are people out there who claim, there have been huge studiers and historians and aficionados of World War II, and they, never heard about these attacks until not too long ago. So, does anyone else have that? Because I sure don't. And to me, that looks like just someone who just missed a little bit of trivia and learning about World War II. And my last one, which is definitely my personal one, very, very personal to me, the existence of the Marine Air Base Iwakuni. I say this because I was stationed there my last 3 years in the service, and my first basically 3.5 years in the service, I was in Yokosuka, and I knew every goddamn base that was in Japan. I was on Yokosuka base. I knew about Itsugi, Yokota, Camp Zama, the Mount Fuji Marine Barracks, Misawa, Sasebo, Kadena, the Marine base in Okinawa. I knew every fucking base in Japan. I'd never fucking heard of Iwakuni till I got orders there. I was like, where the fuck is Iwakuni? I've never heard of this base. Granted, it had been 13 years since I've been there or whatever, but I knew I was in the country for 3.5 years. I knew the bases. Never heard of this goddamn base. All of a sudden, I got orders there, and it's not like it's on it's not like it's in Okinawa where I can say okay, I missed it, or some weird off island no one's ever heard of. It's on the mainland. It's very south, but it's on the mainland. It's just a couple hours north of Sasebo. At some point, I feel like I should have heard of this goddamn base, but at the time, I just figured I don't know. What you don't know, you don't know. But as more of a hearing about this Mandela Effect stuff, it kind of makes me think maybe there was no Iwakuni base back when I was in Yokosuka in the 90s. Food for thought. Now, this isn't just a video on what I've seen. I would really like to hear from you guys in the comments. I'd like to do a follow-up video and see some more military-related Mandela effects from people who have served or just military aficionados. And as I said, it needs to be military specific because that's what we do on this channel. We can talk about Mandela or Berenstain Bears or Fruit Loops or whatever somewhere else. But here, let's keep it. Put in the comments if you've ever seen or felt like something is wrong or wasn't the way it was at some other point, and you feel no, I'm not misremembering this. I know this was the way it was, and now it isn't, and it fucking bugs you. All in good fun. Like I said, I mostly lean towards this is just misremembering shit, but it's kind of fun just to kind of speculate. So that's all I got for the Salty Seaman. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, make some comments down there so I can for my next video. Ring the bell, become part of the Salty Seaman notification squad, however the fuck YouTube has us doing these days. But I love you freaks, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.